Welcome to class. I'm Trevor, and I post D&D videos every week, generally on Wednesdays. This is my second video where I'm going to be covering some of the content in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, the newest D&D book right here. Now, in the last video, I did a full book review about my impressions of Van Richten's, and in this one, I'm going to go into a deeper dive on the 3 lineages included in this book. I will address the subclasses, the Bard and Warlock subclasses, but I'm planning on doing that in a different way and in a different video, or videos, depending on how it works out. Lineages are something I want to say this is the first time they're doing it. It is a substitute for selecting a race, or it is something that you pick in addition to a race. So, and it says in the book that you can talk to your DM about how you want to execute this, but lineages can be picked at first level, like when you're starting a character, or at some point in that character's journey, they can pick a lineage, and that kind of overshadows some of the components of like the racial features that they got at character creation. I really like this flexibility, and I think it kind of builds off of the flexibility that was in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I don't like how much the original races in the Player's Handbook locked players into picking things based on the ability scores associated with the race. I think it's way more fun to have as much flexibility as possible in an RPG. Before I get into the specifics about how each of the lineages is different, I want to talk about the similarities. Let's start with ability scores. This depends on whether or not you have a starting race or you're picking the lineage. If you're picking the lineage from level 1, then you increase one ability by 2 points and another ability by 1 point, or you increase 3 different abilities all by 1 point. If you are not starting with a lineage, then you can keep your normal ability scores from whatever race you had. For languages, you either get the languages that you knew from the race that you started with, or you get common and one other language depending on what would make most sense. Probably a discussion between you and your DM. For creature type, and they specify this, which I think is interesting because it to me seems like a bit of foreshadowing, lineages don't all have the same creature type. In the case of this book, most of them, or 2 of the 3 of them, are humanoid. The exception is the Hex Blood, which is Fae. I think that this does mean that in the future, if they continue to do these lineages, there will probably be lineages that have other creature types that might be more disruptive to the normal flow of the game. Specifically, undead and constructs can have that kind of come up, and I think that this is just them warning us that that might happen. And then finally, Ancestral Legacy is a feature that all of the different lineages have, but it's commonplace. It's the same or ubiquitous between the 3 of them. So what it means is if you start with a race, you keep your skill proficiencies, your climbing, flying, or swimming speeds, if applicable. If you don't, then you pick 2 skills to be proficient in for regardless of which lineage you selected. So again, it seems a little bit complicated. It's not actually. I think it just feels that way because Wizards is having to cover a lot of bases here. They're having to set up rules for if you start with a lineage versus if you pick a lineage in addition to a race. And that just means that there's some wording and some specifics and caveats that don't apply to everyone. I think it's fine. And honestly, I'm excited to just use these instead of races, personally. I think that these are very fun, flavorful things, especially for campaigns that are in the more horror genre or take place in Ravenloft or something like that. So now I'm going to jump into the 3 different lineages. I'm going to go in order that they're presented in the book. So I'll start with the Dhampir, then I'll go to my personal favorite, the Hexblood, and I'll wrap this video up with the Reborn. Let's start with the Dhampir. So the Dhampir is a half vampire, and they are, I think they're pretty cool. One of the things that I really like about this book is the use of random tables. I'm a sucker for random tables. For the Dhampir, there are 2 different random tables included. One of them is your hunger. What does your vampiric kind of bloodline or origin, what does it make you thirst for? Super awesome, especially because Wizards did not make this too cliche. It's not always just blood. There's actually one of these, I don't know if it's intentional or not, I have to assume it is like one of the options on this table is a color. And that's Marceline from Adventure Time. I love this. I think that it can help flesh out a character and make them feel a lot more real. And it can avoid all Dhampir feeling like very cliche Dracula style vampires. And then the other random table that's included is your origin. How did you become a part vampire, a Dhampir? In terms of traits for the Dhampir, they're humanoid, they're medium or small in terms of size, 35-foot speed, they have dark vision out to 60 feet, they don't need to breathe, which is pretty cool. Spider climb is an ability they start with, so they have a climbing speed equal to their movement, which would be 35 feet. And then at 3rd level, this ability gets enhanced. It means, like, at 3rd level, they can move up, down, and across vertical surfaces with their hands free. This is beneficial if they're wielding a weapon or having to cast spells. So I like this. I like that at 3rd level, something that they start with just gets better. I think it prevents the problems with some racial traits being too front-loaded. I know that there's problems with some groups with, like, Aarakocra being able to fly right out the gate. And I think this helps to circumvent that. Having things gated behind levels, I think, is a really nifty idea. We already do that with classes, so why can't we do it with lineages or races? And I know some people house rule that for Aarakocra too. And then they also get the Vampire Bite. This is the kind of bread and butter of the Dhampir class, or lineage, pardon me. And the Vampire Bite is a melee weapon attack that uses the Constitution modifier. It deals 1d4 damage, and then there's some additional benefits or bonuses on top of it. If you are missing at least half of your health, you get advantage on it. And proficiency bonus times per long rest, you have some options to enhance this. You can regain HP based on how much damage you dealt, or you can use your bonus, you can use the damage as a bonus to your next ability or attack. And I think that that is really flavorful. It can reinvigorate you, whether that is through gaining life or dealing more damage or being more skillful. I love this. I think that it is a great way to include the very iconic Vampire Bite feature without it turning someone into a vampire, which would be way too weird and strong, and without it just being so boring that it gets left in the dust. I think that this is a feature that is very useful, and obviously the usefulness would scale depending on what kind of character you make. If you're more of a backline character, then maybe you're not going to be using this bite that often. But I still think that it's, like, I'm glad that it's included. I think that they'd be remiss to not have the vampire have some sort of bite attack, and I like the way that they handled it. Let's move on to the second lineage, which are Hexbloods, my personal favorite. I've always had a preference for things that come from the Feywild. I don't know if it's from reading Midsummer Night's Dream or what, but I just love how trickstery everything seems, and I've always loved running hags in my D&D games. So Hexbloods are half hags. There is a random table included for Hexbloods. It is how did you become a Hexblood? The Hexblood origin table. Were you kicked out of a coven? Were you, like, abandoned? There are a lot of options here, and I really do like it. Although I do feel like the Hexbloods missed out. The other two lineages got 2 random tables, and they only got 1. So I made another random table. This is more of a direct line to draw between the hags that exist in published 5th edition material and creating a Hexblood lineage character. So I created a bit of specifics for green hags, sea hags, night hags, etc. And I based it on what those hags were normally associated with. If you want something like that, you could even potentially base your appearance as a Hexblood on this table as well. Then go for it. I think that that's awesome, and I wanted that to be a little bit more fleshed out for the Hexbloods. So it's there if you want to use it. In terms of what else is provided for this lineage, they are the one lineage that is not humanoid. They are considered Fey. They are medium or small. They have a speed of 30 feet. They have dark vision out to 60 feet, because who doesn't have dark vision in 5th edition? They have an ability called Eerie Token, which seems to me like their bread and butter ability, along with their Hex magic. And the Eerie Token means that as a bonus action, they can remove some part of themselves, for lack of a better term. They can pull off a lock of their hair, or a fingernail, or a tooth. And then, as an action, they can do a couple of things. They can send a telepathic message of 25 words or fewer, or they can view that, like, the area around the token or the person holding onto the token. I absolutely love how creepy and grotesque this is. I love it. I love being able to, like, cut off hair and plant it on someone, or pulling off a fingernail and putting it in someone's bag. Or even using it in more innocuous or positive ways. Chef's kiss. It's a great way. I mean, like, the Annis Hag can do this, so it makes a lot of sense. It is very flavorful. It's very useful. It's right down my alley. I just love it. And then they also get Hex magic, where they can cast Disguise Self and Hex. They can also use these with spell slots. I love also that Wizards specified in the book that Hexbloods can use Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma as their spellcasting ability for these spells. This is incredible because it offers flexibility for what class you pick as a Hexblood, or what class you already were if you became a Hexblood. I think, again, that this is, I don't know, I just hope that more like this happens in future published 5th edition material, because it always is frustrating to get an ability from your class or lineage that doesn't play well with the other. And this is an excellent and elegant way to solve that problem before it even happens. So, kudos all around to the Hexblood. I really would love to play one if I ever played as a player character. I'm always a DM, but I just love these characters, and it also makes me want to run a Hexblood NPC. I want to include like hag adjacent characters that are not automatically evil. I just love it. I also did look into, and there's a tweet from Jeremy Crawford here, not hags are creatures that are fey. They are very often depicted as being female, but that does not need to be the case. That is not, they are fey. and again, his tweet specifies, at least for his games, they can present as female, they can be male, they can be neither, they are magic fairy creatures. Like, it's not that limited, and I don't want anyone to feel that bound in by the typical kind of old crone portrayal of hags. I think that is limiting, and as I've explained in most of this video, I really like when there is flexibility and freedom in the way we can roleplay, whether that is characters or NPCs or enemies, whatever it ends up being. So, again, kudos all around for the Hexblood, and now let's get to the Reborn. The last lineage included in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is the Reborn, or zombies. They are given 2 random tables in Van Richten's. One of them is Lost Memories, which are just that. They're memories from the life that is animating the corpse, which might be at war with the player character. And that's kind of the tension inherent in this lineage. I was going to say subclass, but in this lineage. They are also given a random table for origins. The origin table kind of boils down to like traditional zombie, Frankenstein's monster style creature. There's one that's like scarecrow style. There's a ghost variation. I think that there should be a skeleton one. I didn't see one when I looked on the table. I think that would be an incredible inclusion. I don't know why it wasn't. I don't know if they thought it was like too far from what they were aiming for. I would let a player flavor it that way if they chose to. In terms of traits, Reborn are humanoid. They are medium or small. They have a speed of 30 feet. They get something called Deathless Nature, which means they have advantage on saving throws against disease and poison, which makes perfect sense. They have resistance to poison. They have advantage on death saves, which seems pretty strong, but I mean, if you've died once. They have, they don't need to eat, drink, or breathe, and they don't need to sleep. They just have to be kind of still for 4 hours, inactive for 4 hours. They also get something called Knowledge from Past Life, an ability check that uses when they're doing an ability check that uses a skill, they can roll a d6 and add it to the d20 roll, and they can do this at proficiency bonus times per long rest. This Knowledge from Past Life is, again, them kind of channeling something that they have known or experienced before, which is where that d6 comes into play. It is kind of like a variation of bardic inspiration. They're just inspiring themselves. And I think we should all work to do that. We should all harness that power and try to inspire ourselves as best we can. I really like this lineage. I, again, still have a preference for the Hexblood just because of my particular proclivities, but I do like the way that they flavored these different zombies. I like that, I like the traits that are associated with it. I think it might be a little bit strong, but I've never seen it in action. The advantage on death save thing seems pretty good, like pretty powerful. But I like the interplay between the past and present for the Reborn. I think that that is a cool thing to focus on, rather than zombies just being portrayed as like mindless, brain-devouring creatures. Because I think that that's way too limiting for a player character to embrace when it comes to playing a character throughout an entire campaign, or even just a one-shot, whatever it ends up being. those are the lineages from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I will cover the subclasses in a later video or videos, but overall, my kind of review of these lineages is that they're dope as heck, and I'm really looking forward to using this to inspire NPCs that I create in the future, and I hope my players use this to create some characters or character concepts moving forward. I love the idea of being able to modify a character mid-campaign through the use of this lineage system. And I'm already trying to think about other lineages that I could come up with that maybe aren't of the horror genre, but could add this flexibility in other games if something were to happen to a player character. Not necessarily death, but just something were to happen that would change them so they weren't exactly themselves. And I think lineages really hit the nail on the head for that kind of space, that design space. So, as always, be safe, make smart life choices.